Hello, hello.
How are you? Yeah.
I'm doing okay. I think it's about 40 degrees here. That's standard units. That's not the freedom units. So it feels a lot cooler if I say it in standard units. Because I mean, as an American, I have no idea what that actually means.
So for context, so folks, if you're just joining us, this is the Surfing in Maui long stream. We are talking .NET MAUI all day long, and we switched between East Coast. We did like 3 speakers from Europe, and now we're switching over to the West Coast. And Dan said, "Hey, I'm going to join you from a very, very special place." I was like, "Are you really going to Maui to join us too?" I was like, "No, it's just roadside."
Yeah, so I found a nice little park here in the middle of Arizona. It's hot.
All right, it's like 105-ish, yeah.
Yeah, it's it's Phoenix. It's not cool. So I think as I was driving through the desert this morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, it was still 95 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. It's crazy.
Yeah,
but luckily I have an easy up to give me a little shade here.
There we go. At least it's dry heat. It's not making you sweat. But Dan, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick. What do you do?
God, I do a lot of stuff. I don't even remember what I do anymore. It's like, what do I do? I write a lot of code. David Orton now is no help at all. I just want to say that for the record. Unless you're grabbing beers with him, he's a lot of help grabbing beers. No, we love David. He's been a huge change, I think, for the open source community with Xamarin and now .NET MAUI. It's really been, and I have to give a lot of kudos to the entire team for just being so proactive. I think about that entire shift from going Xamarin Native to Xamarin.Forms, and it was really just a big black box. And the MAUI team has been so helpful and responsive to, really helping the community kind of come along and be there. Which is not to say it's not without struggle. I still can't build Prism for MAUI with preview 6, having a few technical difficulties, but hopefully we'll get that out soon. And that just kind of goes to the breaking nature of some of the changes here. So,
right.
But
so you mentioned Prism because you maintain a lot of open source stuff, and you have been on the bandwagon with I think like preview 2 onwards, 3 onwards, where you have been trying to migrate things over. It's not just Prism; you also have font libraries, you have apps. So let me know when you're ready to share your screen, share your desktop, and maybe
let me do that.
Walk us through a little bit as to where things are at.
See if this will cooperate.
And then feel free to pull up Prism, give us maybe a 1,000 or 10,000 level of what it does, where you are with MAUI support.
Sure. Let's see. So I think I just shared the screen.
Yep.
And get that inception going on there.
Yes. There we go.
Let's see here. Let's just go. If my computer will cooperate with me today. Okay. So right now, Prism for .NET MAUI is actually, it's not part of the main Prism organization. It's a little bit separate right now because this is experimental. There's a lot going on, a lot transitioning with MAUI, which of course is just something you're always going to see with any kind of new technology. There's so many moving pieces to this.
Dan, can I ask you to take one step back? Like, tell us what Prism is, what platforms you support right now.
Sure. So Prism is a MVVM framework that was originally architected by the Microsoft Patterns and Practices team many, many moons ago. I want to say 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. So it's been around a very long time, and it's very battle tested. Today, there are, God only knows how many apps. It's easily tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of apps that have been written with Prism. I know you have, software that is running pretty much every major U.S. bank and the stock market has a lot of apps that are reliant on Prism. 911 software, I guess that number changes for countries, but basically your emergency services to get a hold of paramedics or police, a lot of that software also uses Prism. So it's in a lot of very business critical software. It started with WPF way back in the day, and then Brian Lagunas actually had started the port of taking all the core concepts of Prism and kind of migrating that over to Xamarin.Forms back in 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. I can't remember dates. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, not just because I didn't have any. But yeah, so we've had Xamarin.Forms support for years and years, and again, just tens of thousands, if not more, apps that are using that. I know we have somewhere, it's in the millions of downloads for Prism. So it's very heavily utilized by a lot of, business critical apps. And then, what was it, a year ago? I think a year ago we added Uno support as well. So you've got Uno platform is supported, and now WinUI through the Uno team. So we're trying to meet developers kind of wherever they are with whatever application framework that they're trying to use.
Yeah, no, that's very well said, like briefly. And AC Nichols in the chat room, like we have to understand, like when people come to the Microsoft ecosystem, there's just a lot to take on, right? And you may not know all of the things. And Prism essentially enables the MVVM design pattern, which is, again, it's not platform specific. It's got nothing to do with the framework, but you end up writing a lot of boilerplate code, which is what Prism gets you around, and it has those patterns and practices in place and baked in. So you're kind of falling into a pit of success. Yeah,
and we try to help developers, whether it's from just a very simple Hello World app. And I know there's always this debate, I have a simple app. I don't really need that framework. And the simple truth of it is, I started working on apps without Prism, without an MVVM framework. The code is a mess. I wouldn't dare touch it today. I would just rewrite it because it would be faster. And there's, you have that argument back and forth of what's faster, what's better. My personal opinion is once you understand what you're doing with MVVM, you will write less code with it than you would if you weren't trying to use the framework and you were just trying to go all code and not have that separation between the view and the view model.
Well said. Okay, so you're seeing interest in having Prism work for MAUI, and it's been a journey for you, right?
Yeah, I think at one point we actually had to lock the thread on GitHub because we had people, going, well, where is Prism for MAUI? And Brian and I are sitting there laughing, going, well, that's a wonderful question. Where can you start with where MAUI is? Because MAUI was announced, and it took a year, I think, before you went from announcement to actually the first public preview. Right. So. There's definitely a lot of demand for it. We're very excited to see where MAUI is going to go, and some of the architectural changes that have been made are really fantastic, which Prism can't even really scratch the surface of because it is an MVVM framework, and there are things that, there are certain things that Prism takes advantage of for MAUI that are, just makes things a lot easier overall. With the application life cycle and everything, and also with single project being able to kind of cross compile that, we're not having to kind of figure out weird little hacks to get platform specific service implementations registered with that container. So we are able to kind of take care of some neat things with dependency injection that way, because MAUI approaches dependency injection as a first-class citizen rather than something that you've kind of bolted on to the application framework. So that's really beautiful. But when you move on from that, and like when we look at the font library, You know, just the paradigm of how we've changed from, you know, you have this view that has been constructed and it's very much bound to the MVVM kind of pattern with the whole, let's see if I can get any kind of wind block here. I don't know why it's getting so bad. But anyway, instead of having the you know, everything tied specifically to this MVVM pattern, they've really taken a good amount of time to abstract this away and to find ways where we can define a view and we can define how we want to work with that view in certain ways. But then, you know, if we want, you know, Comet's MVVU paradigm, we can support that. Or if we want Maui's MVVM paradigm, we can support that. And you know, when tomorrow someone wants to announce, you know, they've come up with their own implementation entirely, we could support that easily as well. And that's something that supports a lot of different libraries, you know, things like the Xamarin Community Toolkit. When it kind of comes over to Maui, it will be able to take advantage of some of this stuff. Certainly, Telerik will be able to take care of that. So that way you can, again, you know, just kind of meet developers where they are with, you know, the needs that they have for their application.
No, well said. So where are you? Because like you have, I feel like you've had a lot of experience in actually trying to migrate these things over, both both Prism and then your font library. So where are things right now?
Yeah. So right now, I think we have like the build against Preview 4 that we released at build for Prism. So that's kind of out there. From what I understand, Preview 5 had some breaking changes that I wasn't able to kind of get to. Just, you know, the nature of open source, right, is I'm not being paid to do this. This is something I'm doing kind of in my own time as I have time. So sometimes it kind of has to take a backseat to, you know, me getting a paycheck, because, you know, I have bad habits. So
you mean backseat to life itself? Like, how dare you not work on nights and weekends?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I'm kind of crazy. I'll post some pictures on Twitter of the crazy setup that you can't see, because it is actually kind of funny, everything that I have going on. All you see is like this neat little backdrop here. But anyway, you know, so we have right now a branch for Preview 6 that I've been kind of working on, and there are some changes here that I'll just kind of cover real quick for anybody who maybe has taken a look at this. So in Preview 4, kind of what we had shipped out, you know, we were trying to follow along with kind of where Maui was going, and Maui kind of changes the paradigm a little bit. So you know, that basically that app entry point, right? So on Android, you know, it's our Android application. You know, again, you have like that WinUI application. You have your app delegate on Mac OS or iOS. And you know, what they've kind of done is they've really simplified that. So the boilerplate is really, you know, instead of you even really having code in there anymore, if you go and you look at it, all it really is a class definition that inherits from a Maui base class that's a generic base class. And you just kind of provide, good God, this wind is killing me here. Let's see if I can find that here. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, you're actually by the side of a road. That's not your virtual background, is it? And in the real world, you do have wind.
Yeah, no, this is a real background. There's no green screen here, guys. This is real life. That's actually Phoenix behind me. So, anywho, so where was I? A little off track by that silly wind. Yeah, so we have that kind of startup class. So there's an I startup that is kind of defined in Maui, which is really kind of, in a lot of ways, you know, it's following the model that you may have seen in like ASP.NET Core applications, whether you're just doing like MVC or whether you're doing Blazor or whatever. I mean, there's so many different models that you can do there. And even with a lot of console applications, if you're kind of using that app host builder model, then you're kind of going to be familiar with where MAUI is going, in all this. And so it's a great thing where you have this opportunity to really bootstrap your application and say, here are the services I'm going to use. If you have been using dependency injection, there's just no doubt you're going to like how this really is structured. And you have a lot of extensibility in what you can do, and really kind of reaching in kind of from a shared code perspective, but really just being able to configure like native handlers on like your back button or application lifecycle, things like that, that maybe would have been kind of a pain to do. And you're like, oh crap, well, how did we implement it for this platform? I think we implemented it for, this platform. And it's all going to be kind of in one place, which is really, really beneficial, I think.
Yeah, so Maddie and me were talking about how the startup class is changing, like to your point, to how like ASP.NET or Blazor uses, and it gives you those like DI injection points. But can you show us like your startup? Like if I were to choose Prism for MAUI, how is that different?
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. So if you have been using Prism for a while, you're used to having a quote Prism application. And that really is your bootstrap class, or that startup class that we would use in Prism. And through a few changes that kind of have been introduced in pre-5 and pre-6 here, something that I've kind of been doing is actually re-architecting it a little bit more towards that same paradigm that you would use with a Prism for Xamarin.Forms, a Prism for WPF, or Prism for Uno. So that way we kind of try to keep a more consistent API where possible. And so actually the Prism application itself, or the Prism application base really, implements this here. And
Dan, could you bump up the fonts a little bit, please? There you go.
Let's make it obnoxious for me. Love it. Yeah. So what I've done for Preview 6 and what we're working on for the next release of Prism MAUI is to kind of introduce the Prism application as that iStartup. So it's not just bringing in the traditional application; it's also implementing iStartup. So you're not going to have two separate classes that you are registering services. You will kind of have two different ways that you can register. So you can either choose to register everything with the iService collection, or you can choose to register things like you normally would have in Prism with our DI abstraction layer. But either way, it's all going to actually be the same exact container. So as we kind of do this whole bootstrap process, MAUI itself is really using the Prism container, so that you don't have two separate bags, where you have these services over here and these services over here. It's all combined, which is really awesome. And we take care of calling things like the use MAUI app. So you don't have to worry about saying use MAUI app. All you had to do is just say, here's my application, and away you go. But I think maybe where it's a little bit easier, let me go to the sample here. If I can get this.
Looks like your computer is really taking in the Phoenix heat.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, there is also the fact that this right here is my internet provider today. So let's see here. Okay, we'll go to the sample. And let's look at our apps, yes. Okay, so basically what you end up with, where you see our configure, which you would have had for your iStartup. Now, the Prism application actually, explicitly implements it, and then we have kind of a protected virtual method that you can override and call. But what you end up with, like if you were to use the template today, we drop the use MAUI app, and all you end up with is just like the configure fonts, if that's what you wanted to do. If you didn't need to do that, you wouldn't even have to override the configure method. You could leave that completely blank for a super basic app. Again, this is just from the context of the current template. Like all Prism applications, we do have our register type method, and we can register our page for navigation. It's going to be a little bit different, and this kind of really, it boils down to the way that the application framework kind of needs to operate. So instead of having that on initialized where you would navigate from in like Prism for Xamarin.Forms today, instead we have the on window created, and at that time you can do things like setting the image directory for Windows, and then navigating to whatever page, which is going to set the page on that window that we created for you. So that is basically kind of how that goes. It really is trying to make it as simple as possible, but still have these paradigms that you may be used to.
Yeah, and I like the fact that what you're saying, like the re-architecture of how a MAUI app is bootstrapped and started up really helps out in the extensibility and in the plugging in of services and things that you want to use. Yep. So you're not having to do a whole lot more, because you get a nice starting point. Yeah.
Yeah, and it keeps everything in one place. And, like I will say, looking at MAUI, looking at Comet, which is really, it's built on the the MAUI core. There are subtle differences between the two, and personally, I like the way that Comet has that startup kind of as part of the application, because that's where you were going to set up everything for your application anyway. So rather than having these in two separate places, having that ability to just keep it all centrally located, I think is hugely helpful. But everybody kind of likes likes having things their own way. So you do have the ability to kind of do what you need to do for your application.
Yeah, we have talked about Comet a few times already. This is like James Clancy, and he's based out of Alaska, and he's doing a great job bringing in the MVU design pattern to .NET MAUI and reusing some of the handlers. And it's a different style of how your app bootstraps and how you render the visual tree. I think David talked about this. Like it comes down to priorities, and engineering wise, like it may not be an officially supported thing in November, but we'll see what the future holds past MAUI's first release.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and there's so much that's changing, and that's the really critical thing. So I know I've had a few people ask me why I haven't gotten Prism MAUI out for like preview 5, and it's, well, the simple truth is, there are breaks that sometimes I don't have time for.
Yeah, and starting preview 6, they took a hard dependency, and they had to on iOS 15, which means Xcode 13 betas are now in play. And again, Apple breaks things as well between previews and betas, so it's a lot of different preview things.
Yeah, well, that was particularly fun with MAUI check, and you're going, okay, why did this fail?
Right. Okay, so Prism MAUI, it's coming along. I posted the URL so folks can start playing around with, but you do a whole bunch of other things. So I see mobile toolkits. I know you have a font library, so what's going on?
Yeah, so this is the font library. And basically, let me just kind of look at the source here real quick. So you'll see, I'm working on WinUI. I'll get to it when I get to it. But right now, on NuGet.org, you can download, of course, the font library for Xamarin.Forms. And God, what do I have on there? There's a whole bunch of stuff. Let's look at that real quick. So you have the dev icon library. You have, of course, Font Awesome free. So you're going to get the brands, you're going to get solid, you're going to get regular on that. If you do have a license, by the way, for Font Awesome. Now, this isn't going to work. I've never taken the time to try to figure out how we can make a image source work for like the dual like the dual color stuff. But did you just lose me there?
No, Dan. So we hear you just fine, but I don't know if you saw it.
The monitor is kind of cut out on me, so
it literally said your camera is too hot.
Oh, is that what it said?
Oh boy. Well, maybe you are just too hot as a man, and just the camera can't deal with it anymore.
I'll live with that. I'll live with that.
Yeah, but feel free to turn off your camera. Just walk us through.
We'll continue. I guess you don't see me. Anyway, yeah, so you have Font Awesome. I do have basically, it's a generator that generates all the code that you need, all the mappings between each glyph in the font library, as well as, like what the corresponding code is, so that way you can, have everything strongly typed, which is beautiful. And if you have that Font Awesome Pro license, you can use that generator to generate it for any of your standard, like Font Awesome Light, Font Awesome Solid, Font Awesome Regular, all that. But I do have the free ones out there on NuGet. And then you also have the material icons library as well. So any of these kind of font, like any of these font icon libraries that are out there, all you have to do is really install a NuGet and you're ready to go. You don't have to do anything. There's like one line to register that font, with the font registry, and you're ready to use it anywhere in your application, which just makes using icons in your app beautiful. Oops, that was maybe a little too far. Let's go over here. And so if we look at MAUI, we're going to see those same exact fonts, but in addition, oops, that was in the source. Go back one more. Okay, so in addition to all of those standard fonts that I have for Xamarin.Forms, you'll actually notice that we have an extra project up here. And so this library actually supports Comet as well as MAUI. And again, this kind of just goes back to some of the differences between Xamarin.Forms and MAUI, and how MAUI takes a more abstract approach that allows us to do some of these things. So, I mean, this is out there today. And yeah, let me see here. I can get back to the main page and I'll go to the docs and kind of show you how that works.
That is nice, though. Even though like Comet is experimental, you are already thinking of extending support to it. It's nice.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I mean, part of this was a little bit of a experiment to see how how can we actually take a existing library today and first of all convert it over to support MAUI. But then the other thing is, part of that promise of MAUI is, that we should be able to support Comet, that we should be able to support MAUI both at the same time. And there are definitely some challenges in that. And, I mean, this is really like, if this is something that you're looking at doing, I would encourage you to go to the repo and take a look at kind of how this is set up. But I mean, basically how you would set this up, whether you're doing MAUI or whether you're doing Comet, is in that startup in your configure method. Of course, you're going to have whatever, I think at the time I did the docs, the use forms compatibility was still a thing that's actually gone away. But and of course you see the configure fonts, the same as what you have in the template today. You can still do that for just your regular fonts that you might have for your text. But then if you want to use these icon fonts, you can add this, configure icon fonts, and then you can tell it which fonts you want to use. And there are actually a couple of overloads here that you can do off of the font icon builder. And so this kind of will let you just pass in an array of them, or you can, like as parameters, or you can do it one at a time, whichever way is kind of more your code style. So you have that ability to do that. And one of the neat things I will say on this too is I really love the way that MAUI kind of approaches it with dependency injection, because it changed how I had to architect everything. So instead of just having this static class that was kind of untestable and kind of a nuisance to work with, you know, I was able to really leverage, you know, what dependency injection can do for us. So every time that, you know, I'm saying like, hey, add this font, we're actually registering that font that exists even on the Xamarin.Forms implementation, but now we can actually use that dependency injection and really bring this together. So it really is, you know, empowering us to do some pretty powerful things in here.
Absolutely. And chat room highlighted your GitHub repo. So yeah, thanks for this. Thank you for this.
Yeah.
You also have a mobile build tools thing.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
You do a lot of things, don't you? So
yeah, we haven't even talked about Zapium. Good God.
Yeah. So with the build tools, like, does it have any implications on .NET MAUI?
Right now, I haven't tested it with .NET MAUI.
Could you pull it up and just show us what it does?
Oh God.
Just a repo.
So I mean, I could pull up the repo, but I'll be honest. The mobile build tools does so much for you now. I actually had to do a doc site just so I could remember what the heck it does. But kind of, you know, the core, like what really started the mobile build tools was, you know, that idea of handling application secrets or configuration values, you know, those things that you don't want to check into source control and, you know, are going to change, you know, whether you're doing local development and debugging, or, you know, have you sent this off to QA? Is it ready for the App Store? You know, kind of that process was always kind of a pain, and there's no, you know, without mobile build tools, there's no real good way to do it. Certainly a lot of people have a lot of different things that they have tried over the years, but mobile build tools gives you a really nice consistent API to handle some of those tasks, so you're not having to write any kind of build script from one task to the next. It works by extending MS Build itself, and so it doesn't care whether you're building on your local machine or if you're building in Azure DevOps or in App Center or Travis CI, or, you know, name your CI platform. So it's going to work every single place that you go. And you know, some highlights, of course, you know, you have that that secrets generation that kind of got renamed in 2.0 at the last minute to kind of app settings. And you have the ability to actually generate more than one class if you want. It used to be that you could only generate one class that was called secrets, and that's going to change now. But you have this ability to generate, you know, if you need like a you know, a back-end configuration and you need an authentication configuration or something, you can kind of do that. And where that's kind of moving to is the next iteration is going to have that Roslyn IntelliSense. So if you had like you know, a partial class that matched the same name and had an interface, we could actually use the values to implement the interface for you. So that's kind of where that's going. But, you know, there's also some things like, I know Alan Ritchie asked me for support for Google Firebase. So, you know, that was Google Services JSON for Android. And then you have like the, I totally brain farting out, but, you know, you have like the special Google Services info plist, I think it is, for iOS. So whether you wanted to kind of set that up as like an environment variable of like, here's the location for it, like the file path, or if you wanted to do like the raw contents as an environment variable, we could actually create the file for you on the fly and then add it to the application as it builds. So it's just all of these little, pain points that you have in developing the apps. The mobile build tools really kind of tries to help you solve those issues.
Yeah. And Lance in the chat room is talking about the same issues we all have, right? When it comes to CI/CD and security, checking in APIs and keys that you should not. And Major CK1 here had a question like, does this how does it work with like anything of like a cloud CI/CD build? Which is actually, so this is actually a nice segue because I already see like Sweeky in the back room, and we are talking about DevOps now here. And then this is so much of a real world hassle for a lot of us in mobile dev. But if you are using like Azure or any other like cloud services for CI/CD, how would this work?
Yeah, so it works naturally. Again, so like all this is doing is extending MS Build. So everything that you're going to do on your local machine, it's going to do just fine in CI. There may be a few differences, like for handling a like any of those kind of settings values. It used to be, previously in like version 1.0, it used to be secrets.json. I kind of made the decision to change that to app settings JSON. So kind of, again, more in line with what we see on like ASP.NET Core. And, you're not going to check that file into source control, but, in CI, we're going to look for environment variables that kind of map to what we've defined in our configuration. So there's now kind of a JSON configuration, and that will auto-generate right after you install. So like the first time Roslyn goes, oh, hey, I have this new package, let me go do a build for IntelliSense, it's actually going to generate that build tools JSON configuration, and you can go in there and you can update that to, disable certain things or configure certain things like those project secret or project settings. You'll be able to kind of configure. Another one that I'm actually really happy to have in here. So, a lot of people may have heard of the Resizetizer. Well, the mobile build tools also has a way that you can do this, and I think maybe a little bit easier way for a lot of people. So instead of having to go in and edit that CS proj, we can just simply say, hey, I want to add images in this directory. And then it's going to go out and it's going to look at those, images and then resize it accordingly. And you have a lot of configuration even in that, where you can have overlays. You can generate a banner. So like maybe you don't have any kind of template, but that you're building for dev, and so you want like a little banner in the corner that says dev, so you can easily identify on the device like, hey, I know that this is a dev build, it's not a production build. Or maybe in production you want to kind of have that model where you have like a free or a light version, and then you have like a pro version, so you can generate that on the fly with the same image asset without having to go crazy. So a lot of things. Really, I mean, more than we could cover today. So I mean, I would really encourage people just to kind of check out the mobile.buildtools.com doc site and kind of learn more about how it can kind of help them.
It looks like you already have a .NET MAUI link in there. I don't know if you're starting to think about things moving forward.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely thinking about MAUI, and I know people are going to be asking me about it. So mobile build tools should just kind of work with MAUI. It's using all of those same native SDKs. Kind of behind the scenes, like, there have been some really cool things that we get with like the project structure and that single project approach. But behind the scenes, it's really kind of the same iOS and Android SDK that is handling everything for us. So there really isn't a whole lot of change because we're working with MS Build itself rather than kind of higher up the chain. So
well said. Yeah. So we're almost at time, and this has been the trend like since this morning. Like every one of our speakers could talk about their stuff for like a whole day.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
yeah, Dan, thank you for all that you do. And why don't you go ahead and stop sharing your screen, and let's see if you can bring your camera back. And folks, if you're just joining us, like Dan doesn't look like a black screen, except he's trying to go off. He's literally at an RV park and trying to go off his little phone for a tethering device. So no, I don't think we can. And we actually lost Dan entirely. So let's see if our next speaker is ready to be brought on. Squeaky, hi.